Billionaire orders black waitress to clean his shoes. What she does instead leaves him stunned. What if you were humiliated in front of the world by a billionaire, and instead of backing down, you turned the tables in a way no one saw coming? Aaliyah Johnson moved through the world like a shadow, seen but never truly noticed. At 30, she had mastered the art of invisibility in the opulent dining room of Lucille, a Manhattan restaurant where the plates cost more than her monthly rent. Her warm brown skin glowed under the soft lighting, but her smile, carefully practiced, wide enough to charm but not so wide as to invite familiarity, was her shield. It hid the exhaustion of 12-hour shifts, the ache in her feet, and the weight of a life that seemed to push her down at every turn. Aaliyah was born in Harlem, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on. She'd learned early that dreams were luxuries for those with full pockets. Yet, she held onto one dream fiercely. Her 7-year-old son, Tyrell, with his gap-toothed grin and endless questions about the stars, would become a scientist. Every night, after tucking him into bed, Aaliyah would sit at their tiny kitchen table, balancing bills and hope, whispering to herself that it would all be worth it. At Lucille, Aaliyah navigated the dining room with grace, dodging the subtle slights of the elite, patrons who snapped their fingers, mispronounced her name, or left tips so small they felt like insults. She'd learned to swallow the microaggressions, to let them slide off her like water. But each one left a mark, a quiet bruise on her spirit. Still, she kept moving, because Tyrell's future depended on it. Her co-workers, a tight-knit group of servers and bussers, were her lifeline. There was Maria, the fiery Puerto Rican bartender who slipped Aaliyah extra coffee during breaks, and Jamal, the line cook who always saved her a plate of food before the kitchen closed. They understood the unspoken rule of their world. You served, you smiled, you survived. The night began like any other, with the hum of wealth filling Lucille. The restaurant was a cathedral of excess, its walls adorned with gold leaf, its tables crowded with hedge fund managers, tech moguls, and old money heiresses. Aaliyah was in the middle of serving a table of venture capitalists when the front door swung open, and William Cross walked in. William was a name that carried weight. At 52, he was the CEO of Cross Enterprises, a conglomerate that owned half the skyline in New York and a good chunk of Silicon Valley. His tailored suit cost more than Aaliyah's yearly salary, and his presence commanded the room. His entourage, 3 men in equally expensive suits and a woman in a sleek dress who typed furiously on her phone, followed him like planets orbiting a sun. The maitre d' scrambled to seat them at the best table, a corner booth with a view of the city's glittering lights. Aaliyah approached their table, her notepad ready, her smile in place. William barely glanced at her, as he ordered a $3,000 bottle of Bordeaux and a rare steak. His voice was clipped, his eyes scanning the room as if she were part of the decor. She took the order, her pen moving quickly, and turned to leave when his voice stopped her. "Hold on," William said, his tone casual but laced with something darker. He leaned back in his chair, one polished shoe extended toward her. A smudge of dirt marred its surface, barely noticeable. "Clean it." The words landed like a slap. The table fell silent, his entourage exchanging smirks. A few nearby patrons glanced over, their curiosity veiled by feigned indifference. Aaliyah's heart thudded in her chest, but her face remained calm. She'd heard worse, comments about her hair, her accent, her place. But this was different. This was a public test, a power play meant to humiliate. She met his gaze, her dark eyes steady. William's smirk widened, expecting her to bend, to scramble for the brush and prove her subservience. Instead, Aaliyah set the shoe brush down on the table with a soft clink. Without a word, she turned and walked away, her back straight, her steps deliberate. The room seemed to exhale. William's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of surprise. His entourage shifted uncomfortably, but he waved it off, laughing too loudly. "She'll learn," he said, pouring himself another glass of wine. But Aaliyah wasn't done. Back in the kitchen, Aaliyah's hands trembled as she leaned against the counter. Maria was at her side in an instant, her voice low. "What the hell was that, Aaliyah? You okay?" Aaliyah shook her head, her throat tight. "I'm done taking it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm done." Jamal, wiping his hands on his apron, overheard. "You sure about this? Cross is connected. He could get you fired." "I know," Aaliyah said, her eyes burning with a fire she hadn't felt in years. "But I'm not invisible anymore." That night, after a shift, Aaliyah sat down with the restaurant's manager, a nervous man named Mr. Ellison who avoided conflict like it was a disease. She filed a formal complaint against William Cross, detailing his behavior and the humiliation he'd intended. Mr. Ellison tried to dissuade her, citing William's influence, but Aaliyah held firm. "If you don't file it, I'll take it to the press," she said, her voice steady. The complaint was filed, and by morning, the story had leaked. A server at Lucille had overheard Aaliyah's conversation and posted about it on X, tagging local journalists. The post went viral, the hashtag Aaliyah's stand trending within hours. Clips of security footage from the restaurant surfaced, showing Aaliyah's quiet defiance, her refusal to bend. The internet exploded with support, particularly from black women in the service industry who shared their own stories of mistreatment. "She's us," one post read. "She's every black woman who's had to smile through the pain." William Cross was no stranger to controversy, but this was different. The viral story painted him as a caricature of privilege, a billionaire bullying a hard-working single mother. His company's stock dipped as investors worried about the PR fallout. His advisors, led by the sharp-tongued Claire Bennett, urged him to issue a public apology. "This isn't going away," Claire said, shoving a tablet in front of him with the latest headlines. "Fix it, or it'll cost you more than a few points on the market." William scoffed, tossing the tablet aside. "She's a waitress. This is nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Protests formed outside Cross Enterprises headquarters, with signs reading, "Respect Aaliyah," and "End Workplace Abuse." News outlets ran segments on the systemic mistreatment of service workers, particularly women of color. Aaliyah's story had struck a nerve, and the world was watching. Meanwhile, Aaliyah was navigating her own storm. Reporters camped outside her apartment, and her phone buzzed with messages from strangers, some offering support, others spewing hate. Tyrell, sensing her stress, curled up next to her one night and asked, "Mom, are you in trouble?" She smoothed his hair, her heart aching. "No, baby," she said. "I'm just standing up for what's right." Aaliyah refused to back down. When a local activist group reached out, she agreed to speak at a rally, her voice amplifying the stories of others like her. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every server, every cleaner, every person who'd been made to feel small. A week after the incident, William's team arranged a private meeting at a neutral location, a quiet conference room in a midtown hotel. Aaliyah arrived alone, her head high, dressed in a simple blazer and jeans. William sat across from her, his usual swagger replaced by a guarded expression. Claire, his advisor, was there, taking notes. "I'm here to apologize," William began, his voice clipped. "What I did was inappropriate. I'm sorry." Aaliyah studied him, her face unreadable. "That's not enough," she said. "Words don't fix what you did. They don't fix what people like you do every day to people like me." William bristled, but Claire shot him a warning look. Aaliyah leaned forward, her voice steady but fierce. "You have power, Mr. Cross. More than most people will ever have. If you want to make this right, use it. Fund scholarships for kids like my son. Create jobs for people in my community. Pay your workers fairly. Do something that matters." The room was silent. William's jaw tightened, but for the first time, he didn't interrupt. Aaliyah stood, her eyes never leaving his. "I'm not here for your apology," she said. "I'm here for change." William Cross was not a man accustomed to self-reflection. His life had been a series of conquests, business deals, real estate, power. But Aaliyah's words lingered, gnawing at him. He saw the headlines, the protests, the faces of people who looked nothing like him but whose stories mirrored Aaliyah's. For the first time, he glimpsed the world through someone else's eyes. 2 weeks later, William held a press conference. Flanked by his team, he announced the Cross Foundation, a $500 million initiative to fund scholarships, job training, and fair wage programs for marginalized communities, with a focus on people of color in the service industry. He named Aaliyah as a consultant, ensuring her voice would shape the programs. The announcement stunned the world, and Aaliyah. She watched the press conference on her phone, Tyrell asleep in her lap. Her first instinct was skepticism. Billionaires didn't change overnight. But as she read the details, real, actionable plans with measurable goals, she felt a flicker of hope. William had taken her challenge seriously, and while it didn't erase the past, it was a start. The rally was held in Harlem, on a warm summer evening. Hundreds gathered, their signs and voices filling the air with a call for justice. Aaliyah stood at the podium, her hands steady, her heart full. Tyrell sat in the front row, beaming with pride. William was there too, seated quietly in the back, listening as Aaliyah spoke. "I used to think being invisible was my job," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "But I'm not invisible anymore. None of us are. We're the ones who keep this world running, the servers, the cleaners, the dreamers. And we deserve to be seen, to be valued, to be heard." The crowd erupted in cheers, their energy electric. Aaliyah's eyes found William's, and for a moment, they held each other's gaze. He nodded, a small gesture, but one that carried weight. Months later, at Tyrell's school graduation, Aaliyah sat in the audience, her eyes shining with tears. Tyrell, in a tiny cap and gown, accepted an award for his science project, a model of the solar system he'd built with her help. As he waved at her from the stage, Aaliyah knew every fight, every moment of defiance had been worth it. The Cross Foundation was in full swing, with Aaliyah advising on its programs. Scholarships had been awarded to dozens of kids from her community, including a science camp for Tyrell. William, while still flawed, had become an unlikely ally, using his platform to advocate for change. Aaliyah didn't trust him completely, but she trusted the momentum they'd created together. In the final moments of the rally, as the crowd dispersed, Aaliyah stood with Tyrell, looking up at the stars. "Mom," he said, tugging her hand, "do you think I'll be a scientist one day?" She smiled, her heart full. "Baby, you're already on your way."